In this video, let's talk about this and super. Now this is a very super concept, so let's focus. So what I will do is I will just remove all this thing just to make it simple and clear this part as well. And for this, I don't even need this particular classes. So let me just close these files and keep it simple. Okay, so we have a very simple code here. Now what I will do is, just to understand this and super, I will create a class called A. I know this is a very simple name, but just for the example, we can take them. And then we got a class B. Okay, we got two classes. And then I'm also saying that this B class extends A. Of course, we are doing inheritance here, and it makes sense because we just talked about inheritance. And then what I will do is, I will create a constructor for both. Of course, we can do that, right? Now, before creating a constructor, let me say, if I create object of B, of course, we can do that, right? So this B class, we got an object of B class here, and we can do that. Let me create a constructor of B here. Now, how do we create a constructor? It's very simple. You specify public, and then you say B, bracket open, and then here, I will type in B. I'm just trying to keep it as simple as possible. That's why we have taken class A and B, and then a very simple statement. Now, what I will do is, I will try to compile this code, and you tell me what will be the output. Compilation done, right? If I run this code, there will be some output, right? Now, think about this. We are creating the object of B. Okay, we are instantiating it. And we have learned about this, that whenever you create the object, it will call the constructor of a class. So the object we are creating is of B, and we have a constructor, which is B here, which prints a statement. So of course, I'm expecting that it will execute the constructor, and it will. And that's why you got in B. That perfectly makes sense, and we have talked about this from a long time. The twist here is, what if I have a constructor in A as well? And here I'm printing in A. Now, what do you think will be the output? Because of course, we are creating the object of B, not A. So it should call the constructor of B, and that makes sense. But if you compile this code, you will see something strange. If I compile this code and run, oh, it is also executing the constructor of A. Now that's weird for us, right? Because we are creating the object of B, it should only call the constructor of B, but it is also calling the constructor of A, and that sounds weird. Now we'll understand that, but at this point, just remember, whenever you create object of a class, it will call the constructor of subclass and superclass both. A is a superclass here, B is a subclass, it will call the constructor of both. Why? We'll talk about it in some time, but it calls the constructor of both. Now let me just add a twist here. In B, let me create a parameterized constructor, and we have seen that, right? So what is parameterized constructor? A constructor which takes a value. Let's say this is n, okay? And here I will print in B int, because we have a constructor which takes a integer parameter. I'm just printing int just to differentiate between these two statements. Now with this, if I compile this code and run, what do you think, what will be the output? Compile and run. Still it is in A and in B. Why not in B int? Is because when you are creating the object, you're not passing any value here. Basically, you are calling a default constructor. But if you pass a value, let's say 5, in this case, you are specifically mentioning, hey, I'm creating an object of B and I'm passing an integer here. So it will call the constructor of B, which takes integer. Now, by doing this, if I run this code, you can see it is printing in A and in B int. Okay, that actually makes sense. It will call the constructor of A. But what if I also have a parameterized constructor in A as well, which takes a n, and it also prints in A int. Now, since we were not having a parameterized constructor, it was calling a default constructor. That's what I'm assuming at this point. Now, when you have a parameterized constructor for both, for A and B both, now there is an expectation that it will print in A int and in B int. And that's what I'm thinking. I'm not sure what you're thinking. Let's try. Let's see if this works. Oh no. What is happening here? It is calling the parameterized constructor of B. That actually makes sense. But why the default constructor of A? It should have been called this one, right? Let's understand why it is first of all calling the constructor of parent class. Why in the first place? The thing is, and remember this point, every constructor in Java has a method which is there, even if you don't mention, okay? And that method is super. Now this method is there even if you don't mention. You can imagine that's like a John Cena. I don't know if you know the John Cena memes, but that's just that you can't say it. Okay, so super is there, you can't say it. Even if you don't mention super, it is there. So by default, every constructor, the first statement is super. And every constructor, not just this one, every constructor. Here as well, super. Okay, so every constructor will have super. Same goes for A as well. It will also have super and super. Irrespective of which class it is, it will have this statement super. Even if you don't mention, it is there. Okay, that's a point to remember. Now let's try to understand how it is working. Let's do a dry run. The moment you execute this statement, what is happening? It is calling the constructor of B, which is parameterized. So it is calling this particular method. So when you execute this method, the first thing it sees is super, not the system.out.println. What it is saying is super. Now what is super? Now super method simply means call the constructor of a superclass. So let me repeat. Super means call the constructor of a superclass. Now what is there in a superclass? This is a superclass. It is calling the constructor of a superclass, but which one? The parameterized one. Sorry, the default one. If you can see, we are saying default. We are not passing any parameter here. So it is calling this particular constructor. And that's why it is printing in A. And that's why if you can see the output, it is first printing in A. And then once it executes the A constructor, it will execute the remaining part of B constructor, which is this part, in B int. And that's why we got in B int, okay? That means if I don't want to call this constructor, if I want to call the parameterized one, we have to do only one change, which is what if in this super, you pass a number. So n is a value, right? It will have a value. The same value you're passing to this super. Now what we are saying is, hey Java, I know you're going to execute this superclass constructor, but I'm passing a parameter there. So now this time you have to call the parameterized constructor. By doing those changes, let's compile and run. Here we go. It is printing in A int and in B int. So super is a very handy tool. It's there already. You don't have to mention that. But if you want to make some changes, of course you have to mention. So if you want to pass a parameterized constructor, then explicitly you have to mention super. I hope that made some sense. Okay, now what I want is, I want to call the default constructor of B. Okay, I'm not passing any parameter here. I'm calling a default constructor of B. So of course, if I execute this, if I compile and run, you can see it's printing in A and in B. Why? It's because when you are calling the default constructor here, in default constructor of B, it will execute first. It is calling this super. That means it is calling this particular constructor, which is printing in A, and then it is printing in B. It will continue with this execution of constructor B, right? But what I want now is, I know you got the point. What I want is, I want to execute in A int, and then I want to print in B. So the output which I want is in A int in B. So how can we play with that? So what if here, if I pass a value, let's say 5 or any number, doesn't matter. If I pass a number, it will try to create object of B with a default constructor. It will execute the default constructor. But now we are calling a superclass constructor by passing a value. So which constructor will be called? Of course, the second one. And it will print in A int in B. Let's try, compile, run, and that's what we got. So that's how we can play with super. And that is fun, right? Now I have a question for you. Maybe you have observed it or not. See, in B class, when we are saying super, it actually makes sense because we have a superclass for B. Okay, this is A here is a superclass. But when you say super for A, what is a superclass for A? We have not mentioned anything here, right? Okay, now that's why we have to introduce a new concept here. Every class in Java, let me repeat, every class in Java extends the object class. So object is a class in Java, which has a lot of methods. We'll talk about those methods later. But every class in Java extends this class, even if you don't mention. So even if you don't mention this, it is extending it. Again, you can imagine this as a John Cena. It's there, you can't see it. Okay. So even if you don't mention or you mention, it's the same thing. So when you say super here, you're basically calling a constructor of the object class. Okay, in object class also we have a constructor. This is what you're calling. Cool, right? So even if you don't mention it, is there. Now you might be thinking, the B class must be extending A and object both? No. B class extends A class extends object. So this is multi-level inheritance. Okay, there is no multiple still now. Okay, so yeah, that's how it works. We have object class. So this super represents the constructor of the object class. So yeah, so we have talked about super, but what is this? Okay, now let me introduce this here. The output which I want now is, I want to execute both the constructor of B. Okay, so let me just keep it default now. Let me say super. I want to execute both the constructor of B. So I want only one object, okay? With one object, can I execute both the constructor? Of course, I want to execute the constructor of A, which is default, but I want to execute the constructor of both B. So what I'm saying is, I want in A, I want in B, and in B int. Is it possible? For that, what we can do is, see, we are creating the constructor. Let me pass a value here. Let me pass 5. So of course, by doing that, what we are doing is we are calling the constructor, which is the parameterized one, and we are calling super. And that's what is calling the superclass constructor. But then we have one more method called this. We have talked about this keyword, right? Now what this will do is, this will execute the constructor of a same class. Let me repeat. This will execute the constructor of a same class, which is this one. We are not passing in a parameter, so it will call the constructor of a same class. And then this constructor is calling the constructor of a superclass. Let's try if this works. Compile, run, and you can see that we got in A, in B int. I mean, of course, this will execute first, this method, but this particular method B constructor is executing this, which is the default constructor. The default constructor executes the super, which goes here. It will execute in A, it will execute in B, and then in B int. So that's what is, which is this keyword and also this method and super method. So this method executes the constructor of a same class. Super method executes the constructor of a superclass. So yeah, that's it from this video. I hope you enjoyed. Let's see what we can do in the next video.